Hi there, how are you? For the past few weeks, I don't feel like I've been doing very much at all. I've had little bursts, little flurries of activity, but then I spent a lot of time seemingly doing nothing and sleeping a lot as well. But that's okay, whatever it takes to get through. It's made me think though, made me reflect on previous crises that I've been through and how I responded to those, because over the past 12 years I've been diagnosed with primary breast cancer 3 times and secondary breast cancer 3 times. Secondary is where it spreads to other parts of the body and becomes incurable or terminal. And the way I've responded has been similar but different in those situations. So I thought I'd share that with you because it might be useful. I hope so. So for example, when I was first diagnosed with primary breast cancer, I got very busy. I researched everything I could possibly find out about breast cancer, causes of breast cancer, treatments for breast cancer, alternative therapies, you name it, I did it. And reflecting back, I think a friend of mine would say that was a type A response. I've never really considered myself to be type A, but it's a kind of keep busy, let's do something about this, let's sort this out kind of response. I also turned vegan overnight, which was a huge step for me because I've never really liked vegetables. So to only eat fruit and vegetables and only drink water was a huge change for me. And in fact, after 6 months, I decided to stop because I actually felt depressed. I didn't enjoy my food, so I didn't eat. So my husband kept giving me spaghetti bolognese that he would cook specially for me because he said, you have to eat. So I decided then that it wasn't worth continuing with my vegan diet. But I realise, looking back on it now, that both of those tactics were a way to keep busy, a way to keep my conscious mind busy. Because if you think about your conscious mind and your unconscious mind as the two parts of an iceberg, you get this kind of drawing of an iceberg with the waterline. And it's a good way of trying to describe the conscious brain or the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. So the conscious mind is about 1/10 of the total, and the unconscious mind is the remaining 9/10. So our conscious minds can only really cope with one thing at a time. Regardless of what we think about multitasking, we can only do one thing at a time or think about one thing at a time. And in times of crisis, the conscious mind has a tendency to go, ah! So distracting the conscious mind is quite useful because it stops it from panicking, and also it enables the unconscious mind to get on with the business of figuring out what to do next. So, I mean, the unconscious mind is so amazing in what it does. It keeps us alive, basically. It tells I don't know which part of our body, our brain or our blood cells or what, I don't know. It makes sure that we have enough oxygen to our cells. It makes sure that our heart keeps beating. It makes sure we keep breathing, all these things. So it's an amazing part of the mind. And like I say, we expect our conscious mind to do all the thinking, but actually it's the unconscious mind that does all the clever stuff. So in times of crisis, it's useful to distract the conscious mind. And really doing all this research and turning vegan, changing my diet completely, so I had to concentrate on what I was going to eat. That's all just ways of distracting the conscious mind. When I was diagnosed with secondaries, it was quite different, my response. I suppose it was a bigger crisis in a way, because now the disease wasn't just pretty yuck, it was terminal. So that kind of puts a crimp in your day. And I think I'm fortunate, because the biggest thing that I hear from women like me who have been diagnosed with secondary breast cancer is life hasn't turned out the way I expected or the way I planned it. And I think we all feel a little bit like that now, or most people do anyway. I kind of don't, because I never planned my life. I have never ever planned. I just kind of see what's around, and if I fancy it, I do it, And I think that a lot of people do spend an awful lot of time living in the future, planning for the future, rather than living in the now, enjoying the now. And I think now is an ideal opportunity to practice doing that a bit more. So, as I say, when I was diagnosed with secondaries, I responded slightly differently. For the first two diagnoses anyway, the third one was slightly different again. So the first two diagnoses, when I had breast cancer in the spine, first of all, and then breast cancer in the brain, I kind of shut off. I think that's the only way I can describe it. For about a month, I simply sat on the sofa in my pyjamas, watching TV, and not really doing much of anything. Now, when I say I watched TV, I didn't just watch endless TV. Well, I did, but I was very choosy about what I watched. So what I watched had to either be funny, or it had to be inspiring in some way. So I used to watch a lot of comedy, and I also watched programs where people had creative challenges. And there was one program in particular that I remember where people would convert some strange building into a home. And I can remember one couple in particular that converted an old water tower into their luxury home. And they had lots of challenges along the way. But in the end, they managed to have a wonderful home and a beautiful view of the surrounding countryside. So what was happening there? Again, I was distracting my conscious mind, giving it something to do without actually having to think too much. So I was calming it down, if you like, by watching television. And in the meantime, I was also feeding positive and happy messages to my unconscious mind, especially watching these people convert these odd buildings into wonderful homes and overcoming challenges. It was kind of reinforcing the positive message that I could get through this. So I just felt very calm, and after about a month I felt able to do something, and I don't really remember exactly what I did, but I did something. The other thing I noticed as well, especially the first time I was diagnosed with secondaries, I didn't know how I felt. I couldn't explain how I felt. So any kind of talking therapy really wasn't very helpful. And in fact, I went along to an art therapy session, and I enjoyed the art. I enjoyed drawing or painting something. But then at the end of the session, I was supposed to explain what my painting represented. And I thought, I haven't got a clue. How would I know what that means? But the good thing that came out of it was that I discovered painting, in particular intuitive painting and abstract painting. So I would simply get a brush out and move it around the canvas and use bright colours. I mean, you can see some of the artwork or bits of artwork behind me. So I was still expressing myself, but I wasn't doing it in words. So I was able to get the emotions out, but without having to say, oh, this is how I feel, because I didn't know. And again, I think that was a good way of dealing with the emotions in a crisis. I'm not suggesting that everybody should start painting. I mean, whatever floats your boat. I mean, I've noticed a lot of people have been baking or cooking various different things. That's slightly more of a, like me turning vegan or researching cures for breast cancer or whatever. It's a doing thing slightly more than a being thing, but it doesn't really matter. It's whatever, as I say, whatever distracts your panicking mind and calms it down is a good thing to do. I think after the first diagnosis of primaries and the first 2 diagnoses of secondaries, because the second one in the brain was a bit of a blow, because I've always prided my brain, and I couldn't imagine anything worse at the time. But here I am, so I got through it. And after a while, it's kind of business as usual almost. I mean, the last time I had a diagnosis of secondaries was 2 years ago. And I had treatment, and I mean, I had treatment for the brain tumours anyway, that was pretty good and pretty swift, and I was kind of back to normal very quickly. I had to have different treatment because I also had a tumour in one of my adrenal glands, which is quite unusual. And it was quite interesting because I started thinking, so adrenal glands, that's fear, isn't it? So what am I afraid of? So again, I do like to analyse things. But apart from that, I've generally been pretty relaxed about the whole thing. And I think similarly with the current situation with coronavirus, I'm not really panicking. I'm not really kind of getting into a flap or whatever. I mean, I'm considered to be extremely vulnerable or at very high risk because I'm on chemotherapy. And it is what it is. I don't really know what to say. It's a bit weird. And I keep thinking about, is it possible, can I find, or is it possible to find ease even in a difficult situation like this? And I had to laugh. I was thinking about it this morning that one of the problems that people have had is getting food delivered in particular. I'm not allowed to go to the supermarket anyway. I always used to get food delivered because I just didn't have the energy to go to the supermarket. But it was quite difficult to get deliveries in the beginning. But I was getting food deliveries very quickly after I was told to stay at home. I got food deliveries from local government and from central government because of being at high risk. And I have to thank the hospital for informing the necessary authorities. So I was getting 2 deliveries of food per week, where I know my father, for example, wasn't getting anything delivered, and I felt terrible about that because I was trying to play down how lucky I was. But even that became a bit of a liability after a while because it was mostly foods that I don't generally eat anyway. And I passed some of it on to neighbours who are vulnerable. But even they, after a while, started to say, oh, I can't eat any more baked beans. So I had to take steps to cancel the food deliveries, because by then I was getting food from supermarkets anyway, and I could afford to pay for them, so I didn't want to be given free food unnecessarily. But I had to put a notice up on the door saying, please, I don't need any more food, thank you ever so much. So as I say, it makes me laugh, because if that's not an indication of how easy my life is, then I don't know what is. So yes, ease can be found even in really difficult times, and it is just a case of accepting what is, saying, well, it is what it is, things will sort themselves out. I mean, I for example, I think part of the reason why I've been not kind of active all the time, but kind of having moments of, oh yes, I've got inspiration, I could do this, and then thinking, oh, I don't really feel like doing it. I think because it is such a huge crisis, if that's the best word, you know, it's a global crisis. And I was thinking the other day, I have no idea how we're going to get out of this. And then I thought, but I never have any idea of how we're going to get out of things. But things sort themselves out. You know, there are probably much cleverer people than me who are working on things. So I'll just let them get on with it, and I'll do what I can. And hopefully if I can help other people to feel a little calmer, then that's what I'll do. I hope that is the effect I have. I don't know. Maybe people look at me and think, you're not living in the real world. And maybe I'm not. But I don't know. Let's just see what happens. You know, take each day as it comes. Try to enjoy moments every day, and just stay calm and relax. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say for now. I really hope you're doing well. Not just coping, but doing well. I hope that you're finding things that bring you joy, and I will talk to you again very soon. Take good care of yourself. Bye for now.